And now I have the honor of introducing our first keynote speaker of the evening, Lincoln Chafee. During his decades of public service, Governor Chafee has demonstrated a willingness to solve difficult problems and a commitment for doing what's right for the middle-class America. As the mayor of Warwick, he worked across party lines to take on the big challenges facing his city. As a United States Senator, he was a leader in protecting our environment and promoting peace around the world. And as the governor of Rhode Island, he made job creation and education his top priorities to ensure everyone had the opportunity to succeed. Please join me in welcoming Lincoln Chafee.
Thank you, Dr. McGuire. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. McGuire. Congratulations to all the Hall of Fame inductees, a great group of people working so hard to get Democrats elected in Iowa. Congratulations, inductees. And thank you for inviting me to this exciting night in Cedar Rapids. Tonight you will hear from 5 good candidates with a wide range of passions and experiences. And it's good to be in Iowa. I'm a college wrestler, and I have long admired the many Hawkeye and Cyclone champions. As you may know, I am the only presidential candidate who has been a mayor, a U.S. senator, and a governor. And throughout these experiences, I have tried to earn a reputation for courage and honesty. I also have shown strong convictions, sometimes under enormous political pressure. I am proud of my long support for beneficial social programs that help build the middle class. My long support for a tax structure where the wealthy pay their fair share. My long support for raising the minimum wage. My long support for protecting the environment and addressing climate change. My long support for quality health care for all. My long support for a woman's right to choose. My long support for LGBT rights. My long support for immigration reform. My long support for investing in public education. My long support for investing in our roads, bridges, rail lines, dams, and all public infrastructure. And my record will stand up to scrutiny on these and many other issues. In this campaign, I also place a high priority on addressing what is happening overseas, especially in the Middle East and North Africa. As General Petraeus famously asked during the invasion of Iraq in 2003, tell me, how does this end? The 2016 presidential election will go a long way to answering that question. How does this end? We have a choice in 2016, prosperity through peace or endless war. This week, we had the great news of a breakthrough with Iran. What a change. Let's give all those that helped make it happen a big hand, especially President Obama and his team. Avoiding war is worth every bit of our energy. The Iran agreement was crafted with the help of Russia, China, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. This is the right way to make the world safer. Yes, working with our United Nations partners. This is the model of the sensible path for America. Leading with strong, smart, patient diplomacy. Absolutely. This is also a different course than the failed, arrogant, unilateral, bellicose, Republican approach to the world. That's the choice we have in 2016. We need to reject, once and for all, the belligerent advocates of conflict. As governor and senator, I attended too many funerals of servicemen and servicewomen killed in Iraq, a sad and avoidable chapter in American foreign policy. As one who voted against the Iraq War and a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the chair of the Middle East Subcommittee, I have long been supporting the course that President Obama and Secretary Kerry are now charting, not only with Iran, but also with Cuba. This has been an historic few weeks. If we're smart with our diplomacy, we can avoid these endless wars and create savings that can be better spent at home. Diplomacy is the ultimate test of leadership. Thank you, Iowa Democrats. Leadership is also about seeing the future. I see a future with a strong and well-supported diplomatic corps that is a complement to our military strength. I see a future where America is a United Nations leader, working with mutual respect on climate change, world food and health issues, and fair trade. I see a future where less of our resources are going to quagmires overseas and more are going to help students get their education without crushing debt. More going to struggling families so that they can have true economic opportunity and have a chance to buy their own home. More going to help our seniors enjoy the dignified retirement they worked so hard to earn. I see a future where the word coexist really means something, where those of different races, religious beliefs, genders, sexual orientation, and cultural backgrounds can live and work together. I see a future where once again everyone has a chance at the American dream. That is the future I see. The way that we are going to do that is to, first of all, believe it is possible. I believe it is possible, and that's why I'm running for president, and respectfully ask for your support. We have a special country and a special planet. Let's take care of both. Thank you, Iowa Democrats. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Governor Chafee. That was wonderful. And now I am proud to welcome our next keynote speaker, Hillary Rodham Clinton. As First Lady, as Senator from New York, and as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton has been a tenacious advocate for women and their families, and a source of American strength around the world. Throughout her life, she has been devoted to the cause of human rights and equality, working to make our world a more peaceful and inclusive place for all. She has led the fight on some of the most pressing issues of our time, from education to health care, and gotten results to bring us closer to an America where all have the opportunity to succeed. Please join me in welcoming Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Thank you so much, Iowa. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much. It is really a great delight to be here with all of you and with my fellow candidates. I want to congratulate all the inductees, and Andy, thank you for what you're doing to bring back the Democratic Party in Iowa. Just look around this room and you can see that Democrats are united, we're energized, and we are ready to win this election. Now, I know, and you do as well, that elections are always about the future. But this time, I feel that even more powerfully. Maybe it's because our country has worked so hard to come back from the financial crisis. With President Obama's leadership and the determination of the American people, we're standing again. But we're not yet running the way America should. And now we have to choose whether we're going to return to the failed top-down policies that wrecked our economy before, or move forward to chart a stronger, fairer, and more prosperous future. Now, maybe it is the grandmother in me, but this is deeply personal. There's something about becoming a grandparent. It is truly transformational. Some of you know what I'm talking about. It anchors you in the present, and you suddenly have this incredible, amazing little person who commands a lot of attention. But it also forces you to think about the future in a new way. What kind of world will be waiting for her? What kind of country will we have when she becomes an adult? And what are our responsibilities to shape it? I'm thinking a lot these days about my own mother and what she did for me. Abandoned and mistreated by her own family, she was out on her own by 14, working as a housemaid. But she didn't give in to bitterness or despair. And I remember asking her, how did you keep your resilience? How did you keep your faith in the goodness of people and a future that would be better than the past? And here's what she said. Someone along the way believed she mattered. The first grade teacher who saw she had nothing to eat at lunch and without embarrassing her, brought extra food to share. The woman whose house she cleaned, suggesting she go to high school so long as her work was done. And because those people believed in her, she was able to believe in me and to give me the great gift of believing in others and in our country. So my mom wasn't surprised that my first job out of law school was at the Children's Defense Fund. She wasn't surprised that I've spent my life fighting for women, children, families, and our country. After all, that's what she taught me to do. And she never stopped pushing me to fight harder for others, to have the same opportunities she never had. I can still hear her saying, life's not about what happens to you, it's about what you do with what happens to you, so get back out there. And that's why I'm here with you today. That's why I'm so determined to build a better future, not just for my granddaughter, but for all of our children and grandchildren. And that's why I'm never going to let the Republicans rip away the progress we have made. You know, we Democrats are in the future business. But from the Republican candidates for president, we see the opposite. Now, they may have some fresh faces, but they are the party of the past. We Democrats, we look at America and we see limitless potential. We believe in a basic bargain. If you work hard and do your part, you should be able to get ahead and stay ahead. And we believe that the measure of our success should be how much incomes rise for hard-working families, not just for CEOs and money managers. Well, Republicans believe something very different. Their answer is always the same. Cut taxes for the super wealthy, let big corporations write their own rules. That's it. Trickle-down economics has to be one of the worst ideas of the 1980s. It is right up there with New Coke, shoulder pads, and big hair. I lived through it, and there are photographs, and we're not going back to that. This past Monday, I laid out an agenda for raising incomes so hard-working Americans can afford a middle-class life. An agenda for strong growth, fair growth, and long-term growth. That will be my mission from the first day I'm president to the last. And this campaign has to be how we unlock the potential of every American, because that is how we unlock the potential of America itself. Now, I'm having a great debate already with Republicans about what that means for our country. In the past week, Governor Bush scrambled to explain his statement that Americans need to work longer hours. He now says he just wants part-time workers to be able to find full-time jobs. Well, so do I. There's just one problem. His policies and the policies of all these Republican candidates would make that harder. Giving more tax cuts to those at the top won't do anything for part-time workers. Rolling back rules for Wall Street will not help families get ahead. And getting rid of the Affordable Care Act certainly won't help entrepreneurs. Just ask the folks in the sharing economy. Americans don't need lectures, they need raises. So if Republicans really want to help us, why don't they join us in breaking down the barriers so more Americans can enter and succeed in the workforce, especially women? Now, I know that when I talk about this, some people think, I can see it in their eyes, there she goes again with the women's issues. Well, I'm not going to stop, so get ready for a long campaign. You see, I have this old-fashioned idea we can't afford to leave anyone on the sidelines. And women who want to work should be able to do so without worrying every day about how they're going to take care of their child or what will happen if a family member gets sick. That's not a luxury. It's a growth strategy. Paid leave, earned sick days, child care, minimum wage. These are not women's issues. They're family issues, and they're economic issues. So I will keep fighting for them and ask you to join. And I'm going to keep fighting for equal pay, because when women get shortchanged, families get shortchanged. And when families get shortchanged, our economy and our country gets shortchanged. Unlocking potential, though, goes beyond dollars and cents. It really is about our values, how we treat each other, the kind of country we want to build. On that historic day, last month, when marriage equality became the law of the land, Republican candidates were complaining, not cheering. We even heard a call for abolishing the Supreme Court itself. Instead of trying to turn the clock back, Republicans should be joining us in saying loudly and clearly, no to discrimination once and for all. LGBT Americans should be free, not just to marry, but to live, learn, and work just like everybody else. And then there's immigration. We've heard a lot recently from the new Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump, finally a candidate whose hair gets more attention than mine. But there's nothing funny about the hate he is spewing toward immigrants and their families. It really is shameful. And so is the fact that it took weeks for most of his fellow Republican candidates to stand up to him. The sad truth is, if you look at many of their policies, it is hard to tell the difference. Just look across the border in Wisconsin. Governor Walker kicked off his campaign by rolling back reproductive rights for women and stripping union workers of their rights. We don't need any more politicians who shame and blame women for making our own reproductive health decisions or attacking unions for fighting for middle-class jobs. And I know there are challenges right here in Iowa because you've been talking to me about them. Just listen to this. Iowa has fewer than 750 beds for more than 128,000 people in your state with serious mental illnesses. Families worry about relatives who need help and can't get it. And the Iowans I've talked to don't understand why your governor would veto a bipartisan compromise without funding a viable alternative. And that's not all. The government also said no to investing in Iowa's students, teachers, and schools. So tonight, I'm adding my voice to yours. Governor Branstad, put down your veto pen. Iowa families don't need a standoff. They need solutions. That's why we can't let Republicans take us back like they're trying to do. We are not going back to trickle-down economics or the Wild West on Wall Street. We're not going back to insurance companies charging women more for the same coverage. We're not going back to denying climate change. If you ask most of these Republican candidates about that, they'll say, sorry, I'm not a scientist. Well, then why don't they start listening to those who are scientists? Look, I'm not a scientist either. I'm just a grandmother with 2 eyes and a brain, and I'm not going to let them take us backwards. So please, Iowa Democrats, join me. Let's build up our party in every corner of this state and country. Elect Democrats at every level. Take back school boards and state houses all the way to the White House. I'm running to make our country work for you and for every American, for the struggling, the striving, and the successful, for the factory workers and the food servers who have taken care of us tonight, for the veterans who served our country, for the farmers who feed us and the small business owners who take a risk, for the nurses who work the night shift and the truckers who drive for hours. I am running for everyone who's ever been knocked down but refused to be knocked out. I'm running for you. We're going to build an America where we don't leave anyone out or anyone behind, where if you work hard, you will do your part and get ahead, and where a father can tell his daughter, yes, you can be anything you want to be, even President of the United States. Thank you all very much.
To welcome to the stage our next keynote speaker, Martin O'Malley. Of elected executive experience, Martin O'Malley has established himself as a bold, progressive leader, eager to solve big problems facing communities. Governor O'Malley has served in nearly every level of government, first as a member of the Baltimore City Council, then as the mayor of Baltimore, and finally as the governor of Maryland, delivering results for his constituents. As mayor of Baltimore, he improved education, cracked down on crime while improving police accountability, and drove investment to the local community. And as governor, he signed marriage equality into law, passed the DREAM Act, fought for environmental protections, and made Maryland's public schools some of the best in the country for 5 years in a row. No matter the role, Governor O'Malley has always put working families first and fought for the American dream. Please join me in welcoming Martin O'Malley.
Thank you all. Oh, goodness. Well, thank you. Dr. McGuire, thank you very, very much. It is a great honor to be here tonight with all of you fine members of the Iowa Democratic Party in the resilient city of Cedar Rapids. My name is Martin O'Malley. I am running for president, and I need your help. And tonight, I would like to talk with you about the American dream that we share. You and I are part of a living, self-creating mystery called the United States of America. We've been given a gift, not an old car to be tossed aside or traded in when we're done with it, but a country. And we must accept this gift with an open mind and an open heart if we are to give it to our children and grandchildren in a stronger and healthier condition than we received it ourselves. Make no mistake about it. Our ability to give our children a better future depends on the strength of our country. Now, let me ask you all a question. How many of you firmly believe that you've enjoyed a better quality of life than your parents and grandparents? Raise your hands. Second question. How many of you believe just as firmly that your children and your grandchildren will enjoy a better quality of life? Raise your hands. That, my friends, is the question at the center of our table of democracy. Whether we are still that country where, regardless of where you start, through your own hard work and your own talents and your own love of family, you can still get ahead. Whether we are still that nation that finds a way in every generation to include more and more of our people more fully in the social, economic, and political life of our nation. FDR told my grandparents in their day not to be afraid. John Kennedy told my parents that to govern is to choose. I say to you that progress is a choice. Now, I am not the only candidate for president in the Democratic Party who holds progressive values, but I am the only candidate for president with 15 years of executive experience. As a big city mayor and as a governor, turning those progressive values into actions, getting things done, new leadership, action, not words. In Baltimore, we took action to save lives by reducing record high violence to record lows. We increased drug treatment to free thousands of our courageous neighbors from the scourge of drug addiction. In Maryland, in the face of the recession, we took action to raise the minimum wage, to create jobs, and to make our state #1 in innovation and entrepreneurship. Driver's licenses for new American immigrants, marriage equality, and a ban on assault weapons. And we didn't just talk about it, we actually got it done. We took greater action, not less, to make our public schools #1 in the country. We took action to freeze college tuition 4 years in a row in order to make college more affordable for more families. We fought for the DREAM Act and we won, and we expanded family leave because when women succeed, America succeeds. As a nation, we have come a long way since the Wall Street crash and the Bush recession of 2008. As our country teetered on the brink of a second Great Depression, we elected a new president in Barack Obama to move us forward, and that is exactly what President Obama has done. "64 months in a row of positive job creation. Our country is clearly doing better, but most American families are not. The hard truth of our times is this: 70% of us are earning the same or less today than we were 12 years ago. And that is the first time that that has happened this side of World War II. There is a growing injustice in our country and economic inequality that threatens to tear us apart. Wealth and power have been so concentrated in the hands of so few that it is actually taking opportunity out of the homes and the neighborhoods of the many. And make no mistake about it, this did not happen by accident. Powerful, wealthy special interests have used our government to create in our own country an economy that is leaving a majority of our people behind. The promise of the American dream is on the ropes. And most days, you know this, Dave Loebsack, in this obstructionist Republican Congress, it's not even a fair fight. 50 years ago, the nation's largest employer was GM. And the average GM employee could send a kid to college for the equivalent then of 2 weeks' wages. My father, like so many of his generation, went to college only because of the GI Bill. But today we are saddling our graduating kids with more college debt than any developed nation on the planet. Meanwhile, as wages flatline or decline for most of us, family-owned businesses and farms are finding it harder and harder to compete with ever larger concentrations of corporate power and monopolies. Get this. Last year, Wall Street bonuses alone totaled twice what every American working at minimum wage earned combined. Tell me how it is that not a single Wall Street executive was convicted of a single crime related to the 2008 meltdown. Not a single one. What have we come to as a nation that you can get pulled over for a broken taillight, but if you wreck the nation's economy, you're untouchable? Main Street struggles. Main Street struggles while Wall Street soars, and this is not the American dream. This is not how our economy is supposed to work, and this is not how our country is supposed to work. We can do better. We must return to our true selves. Our economy isn't money. Our economy is people. All of our people. A stronger middle class is not the consequence of economic growth. A stronger middle class is the cause of economic growth. Therefore, we must take actions that actually lift incomes and wages again for all Americans. Can we all agree that no American family who works hard and plays by the rules should have to raise their children in poverty? So let's take action to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour wherever and however we can. Let us return to the economic justice of paying overtime pay for overtime work and expanding Social Security. And let's make it easier and not harder for any worker to join a labor union and collectively bargain for better wages. Can we all agree that every American family should have the option of sending their kids to earn a college degree debt-free? Then let's take the action to make debt-free college a reality and an option for every American family. A new era of American progress calls for a new agenda to rebuild our cities as places of justice and opportunity. It calls for a new national security strategy and new alliances that are more forward-seeing and forward-acting to reduce threats. And what's more, a new American era of progress calls for a cleaner, greener, renewable energy future. And I am the first candidate, but let's hope I am not the last, to call for moving America forward by 2050 to a 100% clean-powered electric grid for the good of our country, creating good jobs and creating more opportunity. None of these things happen by chance. They do not happen by accident. To get wages to go up, there's another thing we need to do, and that is to get 11 million of our neighbors out of the underground economy and into the open light by passing comprehensive immigration reform. But there are also a couple of things that we need to stop doing as a party and as a country. Among them, giving a free pass to the bullies of Wall Street. We must reinstitute Glass-Steagall, and we must reinstitute it today. We must prosecute financial crimes, and if a bank is too big to fail, too big to jail, and too big to manage, then it's too damn big, and it needs to be broken up before it breaks us up. And we must stop sending American jobs and profits overseas with bad trade deals like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Many of you remember the return on NAFTA. It was nada. We traded away good manufacturing jobs in towns like Maytag's there in Newton, and in return we got back empty promises and empty pockets. I am fundamentally opposed as an American to secret trade deals that our Congress is forced to vote on before we're even allowed to read them. Your Republican Governor, Terry Branstad, has shown us the direction their party would take us, cutting taxes for big corporations and then telling you that Iowa doesn't have the money to invest in your own children's education. Well, welcome to today's Republican Party. They once had leaders and visionaries, Lincoln, Eisenhower. Now they create traffic jams and dismiss science. And now the leading candidate for president is Donald Trump. After his racist, hate-filled comments, true story, the Los Angeles Times ran a headline, and I quote, "Republican feel divided on Donald Trump's comments about Mexican immigrants." Divided? As in not sure he's wrong? If Donald Trump wants to run on a platform of demonizing immigrants, he should go back to the 1840s and run for the presidential nomination of the Know-Nothing Party. My friends, I leave you with these final thoughts. In this summer of anger and frustration and discontent, if you become doubtful about our country's better future, just talk to her young people. You will seldom find among them a climate change denier, someone who wants to discriminate against gay couples, or someone who wants to bash immigrants. The poet laureate of the American dream, Bruce Springsteen, asked once, "Is a dream a lie if it don't come true, or is it something worse?" Whether that dream is made true again for all American families or not is not up to the big banks. It's not even about big money trying to take over our elections. It's really up to you and me. It is about whether we still have the ability as a people to move our country forward. You have a vital choice to make, and I need your help. After this election's over, when a child with a world of learning in front of him asks you who you voted for, I want you to be able to tell that child, I voted for you. When you see a dad sweating through another long shift in order to give his daughter a better future, I want you to be able to tell him, I voted for you. when you see a mom working long hours at 2 jobs for the dream of sending her son to college, I want you to be able to tell her, I voted for you. And when you see a young father who hungers for a job to feed his family, I want you to be able to tell him, I voted for you. We are Democrats for good reasons, because ours is the party of the people, ours is the party of action, ours is the party of our country's better future, ours is the party that will rebuild the American dream and make the promise real for all Americans again. God bless you, Iowa. God bless the United States of America.
For our next keynote speaker, Senator Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is in his second term in the U.S. Senate as the endorsed candidate of the Vermont Democratic Party. Prior to that, he served 16 years in the House of Representatives. Senator Sanders was appointed by the Democratic Senate leaders as the chairman of the Committee on Veterans Affairs and is now the ranking Democrat on the Budget Committee. In 1981, he was elected to his first of 4 terms as mayor of Burlington, Vermont, during which time U.S. News named him as one of the 20 best mayors in America. As a student and civil rights activist in the 60s, Sanders was a frontline champion for equality. He was arrested protesting housing segregation at his college and marched on Washington with Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Senator Sanders was consistently defending working and middle-class families and stood up against the excesses of corporate America. Please join me in welcoming Senator Bernie Sanders.
Andy, thank you very much for that generous introduction. And my wife, Jane, and I are just so delighted to be in the great state of Iowa with you tonight. And I'm also delighted to be here following other remarks from great Democrats who have dedicated their entire lives to public service. This is a great team, and I thank them all. Let me begin by suggesting something to you that I think very few candidates ever say. And that is, given the reality of economics and politics in America today, no president, not the best, can bring about the changes we need in this country unless there is a political revolution. And what that means, in all honesty, is the powers that be in Washington, the billionaire class, the Koch brothers, the lobbyists, the corporate interests, are so powerful that nothing will get done unless millions of people stand up and loudly proclaim, enough is enough. This country belongs to all of us and not a handful of billionaires. My point is that no president does it alone. We need a mass movement from coast to coast so that Republicans understand that when they give tax breaks to their billionaire friends, when they try to cut Social Security or Medicare, we know what's going on, and that vote will be their last term in Congress. And here's something else that all of us should know. Today, in our great country, we are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Today, in the history of the world. But most Americans don't know that because almost all of the wealth rests in the hands of the few. America now has more wealth and income inequality than any major country on earth, and it is worse today than at any time since 1928. The issue of income and wealth inequality is the great moral issue of our time. It is the great economic issue of our time. It is the great political issue of our time, and together that is an issue that we will address. Let me be as clear as I can be. There is something profoundly wrong when the top 0.1% own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. There is something profoundly wrong when one family, the owners of Walmart, own as much wealth as the bottom 40% of the American people. There is something profoundly wrong when millions of workers are working longer hours for lower wages, when we have by far the highest rate of childhood poverty in the industrialized world, and almost all new wealth and income goes into the hands of the few. Enough is enough. That has got to end, and together we will end it. This campaign is sending a profound message to the billionaire class. You can't have it all. You can't get huge tax breaks when children in America go hungry. You cannot continue to send our jobs to China when millions of Americans are looking for work. You cannot hide your profits in the Cayman Islands and in other tax havens when there are massive unmet needs in this country. The greed of the billionaire class has got to end, and we are going to end it for them. But it is not just income and wealth inequality. It is the fact that we have millions of people working longer hours for lower wages. And that is why we have got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Nobody in America who works 40 hours a week should be living in poverty. And that is why I have led the effort in the United States Senate, not only against NAFTA, CAFTA, and permanent normal trade relations with China, but I'm leading it against this disastrous TPP trade agreement. When 33% of white kids between 17 and 20 who graduated high school are unemployed, when 36% of Hispanic kids are unemployed who graduated high school, when 51% of African American kids who graduated high school are unemployed, we need a massive jobs program to put our people back to work. And when our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water system, our rail system is crumbling, there is more than enough work to do. Let's rebuild our infrastructure, create millions of decent paying jobs. Today, the United States of America, embarrassingly, remains the only major nation on earth that does not guarantee health care as a right for all people. I voted for the Affordable Care Act, and it has done a lot of good. But there are still 35 million Americans with no health insurance and many more who are underinsured. Now is the time for us to say loudly and proudly, America will join the rest of the industrialized world with a Medicare for all single-payer program. And when my Republican colleagues, as they have done for years, tell us that we have got to cut Social Security, despite the fact that millions of seniors are trying to survive on $12,000, $13,000 a year, what we say is, no, you're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security by lifting the cap on taxable income. My Republican colleagues in the Senate talk about family values. You all know what they're talking about. Their family values say that a woman does not have the right to control her body. I disagree. They say a woman should not be able to get the contraceptives she needs. I disagree. They say that our brothers and sisters who are gay should not be able to enjoy the same marriage rights that heterosexual couples enjoy. We disagree. But we also have family values, not based on hatred, but based on love and compassion. Our family values say that when a woman has a baby, she should get 12 weeks of family and medical leave to stay home with her baby. Now, there's another issue out there that must be addressed, because perhaps it is the most important issue of all, and that is to understand that the Supreme Court's decision on Citizens United is moving this country toward an oligarchic form of society, because it is allowing billionaires to buy elections with super PACs and unlimited sums of money. It should not be acceptable to any American, conservative, moderate, progressive, that the Koch brothers alone, an extreme right-wing family, will spend more money in this campaign cycle than either the Democratic or the Republican Party. When one family spends more money than either of the two major political parties, brothers and sisters, that is not democracy. That is the path of oligarchy. That's why Citizens United must be overturned. I have not made many promises in this presidential campaign, but here's one I have made. No nominee of mine to the Supreme Court will be made unless that man or woman is clear that he or she will vote to overturn Citizens United. And furthermore, we've got to go further. We have got to, in my view, move to public funding of elections so that anybody can run for office without being dependent on the wealthy and the powerful. At my table here this evening, I have 7 or 8 wonderful young people. And the reason that I asked them to join me tonight is to highlight a tragedy in this country. These young people collectively owe more than $1 million in student debt. I have introduced legislation and will fight as President of the United States to make certain that every public college and university in America is tuition free. We must also significantly reduce student debt. It is insane that people in this room are paying 8, 9, 10% interest rates on student debt when you can refinance your home for 2 or 3%. And we're going to do that. And when we talk about our responsibility as adults, what that means is that we have the moral obligation to make certain that we leave this planet for our kids and our grandchildren in a way that is habitable. It is an international embarrassment that my Republican colleagues refuse, by and large, to even acknowledge the reality of climate change, let alone are prepared to do anything about it. In my view, this nation must and can lead the world in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energies like wind, solar, and geothermal. And like everybody in this room, I want to see an America where when young black men walk down the street, they will not be harassed by police officers, they will not be killed, they will not be shot. To his credit, President Obama did something extraordinary the other day. He had the courage to go to a federal jail and talk about the absurdity of a criminal justice system in which, if we don't change it, 1 out of 4 male African Americans born today will end up behind bars. That is not the America we believe in. And that is why we believe that it makes more sense to invest in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. And to our 11 million brothers and sisters, who are living in the shadows today, we say loudly and we say clearly, we are going to bring you out of the shadows and in a path toward citizenship. And we're not going to divide families up. Brothers and sisters, we are the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. There is nothing we cannot accomplish. Please don't think small. Think big. Think about a future where our kids get the best education in the world, where our young people have the jobs and education they need, where women's rights are protected. That is the America we can become if we stand together and not let them divide us up by race, by gender, by sexual orientation. Let us stand together. Let us remake America together. Thank you very much.
And now I am honored to welcome our final keynote speaker, Jim Webb. Jim Webb's career is defined by a lifetime of public service. He started out serving his country as a Marine in Vietnam, where he was awarded the Navy Cross, the Silver Star Medal, 2 Bronze Star Medals, and 2 Purple Hearts. He then served as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs before becoming Secretary of the Navy in 1987. In the process, Webb became the first Naval Academy graduate to serve as the civilian head of the Navy. In 2006, he was elected to the United States Senate, where he wrote, introduced, and guided the passage of the post-9/11 GI Bill. Jim has always stood up for those in need, and we are so honored to have his passion in the Democratic Party. Please join me in welcoming Jim Webb.
Thank you very much. Well, I have to say, I had the pleasure of serving with Bernie. We were elected on the same campaign cycle, and I've followed him many times on the Senate floor. And Bernie, you always fire me up. So I'm here to turn the lights out tonight, folks. And I appreciate the opportunity, the invitation to be here. And this is the center of where we need to change America, right here in the Democratic Party. It's been amazing to see the energy here tonight. And I would, after what was just said, I would like to ask those who've served our country to stand and be recognized, if we might. It's one of the great moments in my life, in my professional life, when we were able to pass the post 9/11 GI Bill. I wrote it with legislative counsel before I was sworn in the Senate. I introduced it on the first day that I was a senator. There were a lot of people who thought we would not be able to pass this, actually the most comprehensive veterans legislation since World War II. But we built a prototype, and I would like people to consider this when we're talking about those of us who would like to be your president. We built a prototype, a leadership prototype, in the Senate, got a bipartisan commission, and within 16 months, over the objection of the Bush administration to the last day of our vote, we passed this bill. And since that time, more than 1 million of our post 9/11 veterans have been able to have the kind of education that Bernie Sanders just talked about. Get your tuition paid for, buy your books, pay your fees, give you a monthly stipend, and give you a true first-class shot at the future. I also was noticing when I was looking at the program tonight that on the supporters mentioned on the back page, I think about 10 of them are from organized labor. And I know there are a lot of people who are here tonight from organized labor. I'd like to say I'm very proud of the fact that I believe I'm the only statewide candidate in the history of Virginia who walked a union picket line during a campaign. Those of you who know Virginia know the risk that was involved in that. I'm also the only statewide candidate ever elected to office with a union card, 2 Purple Hearts, and 3 tattoos. And so when we see so much demonizing of organized labor these days, and when I look at what we will probably consider the most successful economic system today in the world, if you want to measure it by the balance of payment and the strength of the industries, it's Germany. Germany actually has a higher balance of trade on average than China does. And if you look at their corporate boards, they have for many, many years had organized labor as members of their corporate boards. We need to get the message out to America that organized labor is not the enemy. It is the friend of the working people. It is the voice. It is the way to start turning these economic fairness issues around. You know, we got a lot of problems. We got a lot of problems in our country. We've heard eloquent remarks tonight about those problems. And I would like to ask you to consider here tonight, what would you want in a president in order to start turning these issues around again? And I would suggest that, first of all, we should have a president who can articulate the values of the Democratic Party and work at the same time across party lines, achieving bipartisan solutions and moving the country forward in a way that we can govern. We've had it in the past. We can have it again. I believe that I can do that. Bernie Sanders just mentioned criminal justice and the fact that the president this week visited a federal prison and actually had an amnesty program for some people who had been convicted unfairly in terms of sentencing of long sentences. I would like to say, when I ran for the Senate, I started talking about the need for this country to solve our broken criminal justice system. I had political advisors at that time who were telling me I was committing suicide, political suicide in Virginia. We stuck on those issues. We held 2 years of hearings when I got to the Senate on how to fix this system holistically. We put a piece of legislation forward. We brought, in terms of creating a commission that would examine all of the different intersecting holistic issues that have affected our criminal justice system. We worked from our office. We got a buy-in from 100 different stakeholders across the country in supporting this, including also Supreme Court Justice Kennedy and the American Bar Association and the organizations all the way from the National Sheriff's Association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, to the ACLU and the Marijuana Project. I think it's probably the only bill in the history of the Senate where the Marijuana Project and the National Sheriff's Association both were on it. We lost on the Senate floor. We got 57 votes. It was filibustered. But I also raised this issue with our president in 2011 after we lost on the Senate floor. And I suggested that for an 18-month commission for $14 million, he could put that in an executive order, and we could truly bring the best minds of America together to put together the right kind of solutions that will affect these kinds of things that the president is talking about today and Bernie Sanders was just talking about. And I would say tonight, it's now been 9 years since we started working on this issue, and I would ask that the president consider taking one day, writing this executive order, getting this commission together, and let's really move forward to fix the whole criminal justice system, not just one piece of it or another. I would also say, and I hope you will consider this, that of all the responsibilities of the president, none is greater than that of being your commander-in-chief. I've spent my entire life in and around the United States military. I grew up in the military. I served in Vietnam as a Marine. I spent 5 years in the Pentagon, 4 of them as an executive, sitting on the Defense Resources Board. I've served as a journalist around the world covering the United States military, including in Beirut in 1983 when the Marines were in Beirut. Some will remember the horrible explosion in the Beirut airport that killed more than 200 of our American military people in one day. I was in Afghanistan as an embed journalist. I understand how our American military works. I understand foreign policy issues. And I will assure you, by the way, that if I were your president, I would have never urged an invasion of Iraq. And as a senator, I would have never voted to authorize that proposal. In fact, 5 months before the invasion, I wrote a piece in the Washington Post warning that this would be a disastrous strategic failure of historic proportions, that we do not belong as an occupying power in that part of the world, that would empower Iran, in the long run also China, particularly economically, and that it would unleash sectarian violence inside Iraq and turn our soldiers into terrorist targets. If I were your president, I would not have authorized the use of military force in Libya during what was called the Arab Spring. I warned repeatedly that the use of military force in Libya did not meet the test of a grave national security danger and that it would have negative impacts in the entire region. And I have to say, I am still looking with some concern, some great concern, about the agreement that was just signed with respect to Iran. I would not, as president, sign an agreement establishing a long-term relationship with Iran if it in any way tips the balance of power in that vital region of our world. And particularly, if it accepts Iran's acquisition of nuclear weapons. And I will say that again. I will never accept, directly or indirectly, Iran's acquisition of nuclear weapons. At the same time, I would make it clear that we have strong national security